All right, great. So Anne, you've got some photos to show for us. This is the time of year, folks. Thank you so much for being with us on the Moms Connect call. This is the last minute portion of the Neighborhood Food Network call. And we have a very important topic, which is tomatoes.
Well, there's many things that we could be talking about, but I'd like to tell everybody a little story, and maybe you guys can do this next year because it was unbelievable. I ended up planting a ton of tomatoes. I've put as many shelves in my laundry room as I can still move around. And I put them up on Facebook Marketplace, and I only charged $2. My goal was to get people to grow food. And I was at Menards, the local national hardware chain. They were selling little plants for $5.59.
I know.
So I got I got over 1,900 responses on Facebook Marketplace. And I had a lot of people come over. I had a woman actually come up from Illinois, and I said, what are you doing up in Milwaukee? And she said, I came to buy plants.
Wow.
And I met some of the coolest people. I gave every single one of them my card.
For the Neighborhood Food Network.
Yes, for the Neighborhood Food Network. And with the weather permitting, I took them out to my garden, and we were talking. I was telling them things they could do, and I learned a lot from these. I mean, it was amazing. I loved meeting these people. And so I ended up making a decent amount of money, which a lot of it I've already spent to put back into more supplies for next year. I figured I'd buy them now while I had the money and the prices didn't go back up in case our presidents decide.
Do you want to say how much you made?
Well, around $500.
And how much did you spend on those seeds?
Well, a lot of the seeds that most of the plants are seeds I saved from the Rose de Bern. Oh, so let me share my screen. I'll
Can you
show
estimate how much you spent on seeds? Because a lot of them you saved, so that would be zero, right?
Yeah.
How much do you think?
I don't know, because I'm kind of a freak when it comes to buying seeds. I'd have to really dig down and figure it out. But a lot of these seeds, like Rose de Bern, are heirloom seeds. So what I ended up doing was I have my little website, Annie Organi. There's not a whole lot going on here, but I put up a plants for sale page, and I just told people on Facebook Marketplace to come here and look at what I had. And what I did was I put up a page. Come on. Oh, it's waiting. And I put up a picture. There was my very first Rose de Bern. I did not want to cut into it. It was
Beautiful.
So I put in a page, and this is a beefsteak I grew. And so I put up a page with everything I had. There were more on here. I took some out because I didn't have them anymore. But I also put a link to our recipe on the Neighborhood Food Network for the roasted cherry tomato pasta sauce. And I sold a lot of varieties that a lot of people haven't really heard, and so they were really interested in that. In fact, I had a couple from Ukraine come over, and he just basically said, he goes, oh, I want to buy 20 plants and you pick them out for me.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I just did this webpage. It was very simple to do. I actually had a lot of fun doing this because I had fun researching the background. Like Sun Golds, I was pushing those on everybody because they're like eating candy.
Yep.
And these are great for sun-dried tomatoes. And then people said, well, I'm in an apartment and I only can grow in pots. I was giving them the geranium. They were buying the geranium kiss tomatoes. This one.
How many tomato plants do you think you sold?
At least 250.
Wow, that's amazing that you grew that many.
I know, and I actually sold a whole variety of Amish paste, and I didn't save any for myself. So I have some little ones growing, but once they get in the ground, they'll take off, they'll catch up.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, I did that, and I sold, and I had a lot of peppers too. So
yeah, I'm so bummed the peppers that we had. I made the mistake, folks, of Anne sent me some of her pepper seeds, and my kids put them on the mats, the heating mats, and once they sprout, you're supposed to turn the heating mats off, but my kids didn't, and they got too hot and dried out. So I'm sorry. And a lot of the pepper plants did not make it. So some did, some did.
Oh, Carla's asking, do I eat the skin of the tomatoes? So when I can them, I take the skins off and I dehydrate them, and then I grind them up and I put them in a big jar. I have a huge jar of tomato powder and I put that in soups and stews. So I try not to let anything go to waste.
Really smart. Okay, so can you give us some basics on growing tomatoes? Because
So I was talking to Megan Kane. I got an email from her, and she has an article that I'm going to pull up. I'm going to share the screen with. She said she would love to come back on and talk to us, but she couldn't do it tonight. And she said, share away. So it's really important to use tomato cages. You have, or a trellis, which I'm going to show you in a minute. You got to keep the tomatoes off the ground. They're really susceptible to fungus, and if they get wet, and the best thing is to bottom water them. And there's all kinds of tomato cages out there, and I'm sure everybody's seen them. Some of those flimsy ones don't hold up very well. If you have indeterminate tomatoes, which means they will grow until frost kills the plant, then you need to have a sturdier, bigger cage. This is, and I never even thought of this. I have a whole roll of this fencing sitting on the side of my shed.
That's right. I do too.
I could cut some down and I could make these circular cages, and these would be great. So I will send everybody the link to this article. And another thing I saw today, which I will send you the link, one of my favorite YouTube channels is M.I. Gardner, and he sells, I'm sure maybe some of you have bought seeds from him, because he only charges $2 a packet. So he's kind of like me. He just wants people to grow food. He's got over 1.2 million subscriptions on his YouTube channel. And today he was also talking about something that's super important, is companion planting for your tomatoes. Now, I was very lucky. Last year, I planted basil between every single plant, and then I planted marigolds. And what these plants do is they help keep the soil. You don't want to have bare soil in your garden. That's just an invitation for weeds. It also solarizes the soil, and it dries the soil out, and it kills the microbiome. So you want to have, I have basil between every plant, and then I planted marigolds on the edge. And what that helps do is it disguises the smell, and the tomato hornworms can't find your plants. I had over 80 tomato plants in my garden last year, and not one hornworm. So, and I had a lot of basil. I made a lot of pesto. And so he was talking about tomatoes are really heavy feeders, or heavy nitrogen feeders. So you don't want to have plants in there that are going to also require to be heavy feeders. And he was suggesting plants like bush beans, because not only bush beans are not heavy nitrogen feeders, they fix nitrogen in the soil. So you can plant bush beans on the Ed. He said herbs are a great thing if you want to plant. And I already mentioned basil. He was talking about, thyme and any kind of low growing herb. He said thyme's a great one, because thyme is, and I found this to be true, thyme you can pretty much neglect. I had some thyme in a tower garden. I completely forgot about it, and I have a huge amount of thyme that last.
Everybody should be growing thyme. Thyme is wonderful for respiratory illnesses, clearing out your nasal passages. And thyme is fantastic herb.
And he said lettuce is good. He said no spinach, because spinach isn't a heavy nitrogen feeder, but he said lettuce is good because it's not a heavy feeder, and the roots obviously won't go as deep as tomato plant was. I was taking notes while I was watching the video today. He said root crops, if you've got good soil and deep enough soil, he goes, root crops are great around tomato plants because they use more phosphorus than nitrogen. So they work together with the tomato plant. And the leaves that come up won't overshade the leaves of the tomato plant. And you need to get sun on the leaves for photosynthesis so the plant will grow. He said no brassicas, they'll get way too big. And they will take sunlight and nitrogen away. And he also said flowers would be good. And so this year marigolds are really, really good. But my marigolds got so big that at last fall, I was like, I'm not growing marigolds again. But I did have a lot of calendula, so I want to do some research into calendula, and I still have thousands of seeds, and they're all coming up from last fall.
Marigolds are very good though for keeping deer away and for other types of other garden pests that are around your tomatoes. They do keep other pests away from your tomatoes.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to research, is because calendula is called pot marigold. I was going to see if they have some of the same characteristics. And calendula flowers, I save and steep them in oil and make body balm and lip balm and soap with them. So I love calendula. And they said edible flowers, lavenders, and then he said onions are a great thing to grow around your tomato plants. And I wish I would have known that before I planted all my onions.
Oh, now we know. Okay.
Yeah, well, obviously onions don't grow very deep because the root's right there at the ground level. So I might end up moving some of my onions, but I don't know if I should. So, yeah, I mean, and just grow the types of tomatoes that work for you. And
Can you take this screen down?
oh, yes.
Yeah. Can you also talk about planting them in the ground? I think it's important to know
Okay, so
how you plant them in the ground.
tomatoes in the ground, what I do, and I should have brought a tomato plant up because I have one that's getting really, really tall. The deeper you plant your tomato, the parts of that stem will send out roots, and you'll end up with a stronger plant. So you can literally trench them and lay them down if they're getting really big, and then gently tip it up so it's out of the ground. Do not plant before your last frost date. Tomatoes and peppers are tropical plants. They do not like the cold, and you will not be happy. So I usually
needs to be above, doesn't it need to be above like 50 something at night before you plant? Above 50, I think, or 55.
Something like that. I don't know right off the top of my
And
head.
peppers, it needs to be warmer. So if you go to neighborhoodfoodnetwork.com and you click on the your zone, you find out what zone you're in, and then you click on add to reminders to your calendar, it will show up in your calendar the reminders of when you can do things. And so for right now in zone 7, I can plant my tomatoes in the ground. So I just did that this weekend, and what I did was take off the bottom leaves coming out and plant it in the ground. Some people lay it down, some people plant it deep, all the way up to just the top leaves showing, right, Ann? Just the top, like 3 leaves. And usually you put a crushed eggshell in there, maybe a little.
I use powder. I use eggshell powder because I bake it in the oven and I powder it up and I sprinkle a little. I mean, I hear people who were at my house saying they put in a raw egg.
Yeah, or Epsom salt too. Some people put in a teaspoon of Epsom salt. I did not do that this time around with my tomatoes because the ground is so heavily fertilized with bunny poop. I'm just going to see how it goes this year. I've got a lot of bunny poop, which has the highest amounts of, potassium, magnesium, things like that. But Mark Dudla is on, and I'd like him to add, and if he can, what other types of nitrogen fertilizer would he suggest for tomatoes? And he's also saying put a tire around them for night heat and recovery till safe to remove them from frost. Oh, that's a neat idea. Put a tire around them.
I have 80 tomatoes.
Yeah, you can't put tires around all those.
How many tractor tires do you want, Ann?
Yeah, okay.
He's going to mail them to you.
Mark's trying to get rid of some.
On the nitrogen side, I think there's multiple ways, but really to set yourself up for success, I think, a lot of the compost makes sense mixed in your soil, to have a slow release rather than a quick release. Certainly, if you want a quick release, you can liquefy Chilean nitrate, but just be careful because it does burn. So if you have some really yellow, sickly tomatoes, that's an option. But I really prefer, the peas and the other cover crops that we can till into the soil or crimp into the soil, right? Grow your nitrogen. Farmers in the United States use 1% of the entire world's energy applied to the 48 states in the United States in the form of synthetic nitrogen.
Mm.
Organic farmers grow it and work it into the soil. So there's a complete difference, right? So I would opt for that. Peas.
That means growing a crop of peas before you, so during the winter, you grow
Yeah.
peas before you put in your tomatoes in the ground.
Yep. So I really, after today's lecture, I was just really compelled to say that, to be humbled that I, as a farmer, literally am not smart enough to keep up with everything we have not learned about the soil. And the soil is much like your gut and human health. So I've come to the opinion that rather than chasing all these tests and whatnot, we simply buy multiple cover crop seeds, and those cover crop seeds we apply, and we let the soil heal itself, right? So literally, if you build it, they will come.
So
And
that,
building it is the cover crop, and then the microbes are going to take care of the rest. So always take a portion of your garden and fallow it, but use it as a soil building, and then plant into that next year. Now, whether you want tillage or whether you want a crimper, either way can be done. You can also use frost, to kill your cover crops. So in the wintertime. So, but use a portion of your garden and regenerate your soil with multi-species cover crops.
Is that what we're looking at here,
15.
Ann?
well,
And
this
that's a
is
cover crop?
this is the cereal rye that I planted last fall.
Good job. See, she followed your directions, Mark.
That's great. And when that is head high to Ann, she will go in and crimp that from the edges to the center.
Head
she will
high?
make it
5
head
feet?
high. Yep.
5
So,
feet high?
It's actually growing really pretty fast now.
so
Wow.
imagine 7.5 tons of green carbon being added to your soil, 7.5 tons per acre, just in the biomass, just from planting a few seeds in the fall. So you can completely regenerate your soil through the use of cover crops.
That's
And
amazing.
Ann's going to have a great example of that no-till organic gardening right here.
Yeah, and I'm really pretty excited about it. As you can see, I didn't have enough seed. These beds here, I rebuilt these all last fall. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And a lot of these people who came to buy tomatoes and I took them back into my garden, they asked me about it, and so I was able to explain it. So it was really awesome. But another thing I wanted to show everybody was this was my trellis system for my tomatoes. And Zen did something very similar. This is just 10, I think these are 10-foot stakes, and then I put electrical conduit and whoops.
Yeah. Well, I made the mistake of using wood, and those little white things did not hold up the poles that I had very well. So, and I didn't dig it in the ground very deep. So you used metal. And how far deep did you put those metal poles in the ground? Can you show the side view again, the other picture that you had from the ground? Yeah, that one. How
I
far?
don't remember how deep I put them. I put them, I don't know, probably at least a foot, maybe a little bit
yeah.
deeper. And I also have one of those poles thingies that you're really heavy and you slam them down. So I kept slamming them down. So I wasn't quite sure until they were really solid.
Okay.
Then I have a picture here where I had some extra bamboo poles and created a trellis.
Beautiful.
And I found these things right here, these wood pieces in my attic, on my attic rafters. And here's the tomatoes coming up. And then I have one here where you can see later in the summer, this is the cherry tomatoes, and they just kept climbing up. But see, I'm allowed to plant tomato plants there's all my marigolds. I can plant much closer together as long as I'm training them up, and I just use those little plastic clips that you get on Amazon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was able to, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I think I texted you, Zen. I was like, I just counted and I have like 78 tomatoes, and then 2 more volunteers popped up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's and this is a one time, I bought a huge box of tomato string twiny stuff and that I probably never have to buy again for another 5 years. And so I'm done paying for my trellising system.
Yeah, well, I need to do mine over because I used wood and the wood was heavy and when the wind blew, it blew it over. So some of my tomatoes ended up, hitting
Yeah,
ground during wet season.
I have to do a better job. And one of the women that came to buy tomatoes is dying to come help me. And she texted me today and I said, well, I could probably use help putting up my trellis system because if I didn't put them close enough, I didn't have the poles into the elbow things enough. And we had a really bad storm and one of the trellises came down and
Okay, so the same thing happened to you. You just have to make sure that you make them tight enough.
you just learn from your mistakes.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm so excited that my garden, I just forgot how it's my happy place. But I want everybody here that's planting, I want everybody to take lots of pictures. I really would love to get other people's gardens up on the website.
Yep. And when you're planting tomatoes, another thing is to try to remember to put mulch around them, right, Anne? Because they don't like the wet. They don't like rot. They don't like they don't like the water bouncing off the ground and catching the bottom leaves because then it creates some kind of fungus or something.
And yes, and bottom water them. If you can do
They don't top water them. That means you put drip.
I mean,
hose
yeah,
on
when
them.
it rains, it rains.
Yeah.
Do I use guidelines for an A-frame on it? No, I don't, and I probably should. There's a lot of really cool trellises that I've seen when I kind of look around, but I tend to like work with what I have because some of this stuff can get pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, some of my garden beds look really ratchety because it was old wood that was left here, and I was like, well, it'll hold some dirt. And then I found a railroad crossing thing with those red striped things in my woods, and that's the edge of one of my beds. Yeah, it looks like Sanford and Son, but I like it. So, does anybody have any questions? I mean, tomatoes is such a big topic, but I'm getting pretty excited about growing food and sharing food, and I'll be giving away a lot of tomatoes. I'm going to go up and down my street again. Like I did last year with a wagon full of tomatoes and just give plants away to my neighbors.
That's great.
My next
$500 worth. So that's a lot.
Well, I still have a lot down there. I actually shut down my Facebook page today because
Too many responses.
yeah.
So guys, so just be aware that could be a side gig for your kids. Planting a whole bunch of seeds and then selling the plants afterwards. Your kids could make, if your kids could start off their summer with $500, don't you think they would have a pretty cool summer?
You'll never look at plastic cups that people throw in the garbage again. I went to a birthday party at a park and I made them throw all their beer glasses into a bag that I brought, and I brought them home and I drilled 3 holes in the bottom of all of them. So I didn't have to spend money on pots.
Wow.
Yeah. On recycling day, you can go around the neighborhood and they're going to call you the trash lady.
Get as many of your resources from free, folks. Okay, we're going to close out because it's almost 8:15. You good, Anne? Thank you, everybody. Send your pictures to Anne of your garden. We don't care what it looks like. It doesn't have to be pretty and perfect. We just want to see that people are growing food.
Yeah, I'm taking pictures at the beginning and the end, and I'm just
and save your materials for the next year. And don't forget to add, fertilize during the year. It's better if you haven't grown a cover crop, for next year to grow cover crops, like Mark said. But if you know somebody with chickens, putting chicken poop, like 1 cup of chicken poop into a whole big bucket of water and letting that ferment for, 3 days to at least to like a week or so. Then you add a cup of that into a whole gallon of water to water your plants with. You don't do all of that straight. You dilute it and you add nitrogen. You will see your pepper plants, if their leaves are growing yellow, that's nitrogen deficiency. You will see them grow right back up to green. You see your tomatoes get green again.
You can also pee in a bucket. That's actually good.
Yes,
I-
you can use your own urine. Yes.
I did that, and I have a little garden shed, one of those little garden stools, so I was doing that. I'd just shut the door and then I'd fill the rest of it with water and water my plants.
Right. And Bill is talking about, okay, so let's have Ann, let's get electroculture people on for one of our next calls. I'm going to email this to you right now. Oh, and before before we close out, I just want to say that I'm going to share, if anybody's in the New York area, Common Ground is going to be making its world premiere. It's a documentary, it's a spotlight documentary at the Tribeca Film Festival. It's from
Aquaman.
Yes, it's from the Kiss the Ground filmmakers, Rebecca and Josh Tickell, which I'm glad to call friends of mine. I am in the movie with my family. So this is probably, my, I don't know, 12th or 13th movie. And it's all about, Laura Dern is narrating it. Also Aquaman and Woody Harrelson and somebody else here. Let me see.
Oh my God, I thought that was Donna Farmer.
Ian Somerhalder. No, that's not Donna Farmer. That's Laura Dern. And so Common Ground emphasizes the need to face the reality of our food systems and how profits and power are driving the force behind them, and all about the toxic agrochemical systems and all of that. So it's on June 11th is when I'll be there, 1:30 in New York City. If anybody else wants to go, it's only $25 for a ticket. It'd be great to see you. And also we have our new women's heart care program. We want to draw your attention. This is a Moms Across America part. I forgot to mention in the other call. Please do check it out. Heart disease is the #1 killer of women in America, and has the very same symptoms as anxiety, tightness in the chest, and fatigue. #1 killer of women. We don't hear about it because heart disease does not make a lot of people a lot of money. Cancer does, right? And cancer is #1 killer of men.
There's also no warning.
Yeah, and there's no warning. And we're seeing in 30 tests that we've done with my new company, Heartwise Health, out of 30 tests, about 87% have above a 2, which is abnormal. And 25 to 30% are having severe heart disease issues.
And there are steps that they can do to reverse the damage.
Heart attacks within a few years. If you do not get tested, if you don't find out, if you don't take action, we could be looking at a lot of heart attacks in the coming few years, especially because of the spike protein shedding. Anyway, this was not a neighborhood new food.
Well, I can cut this out and put this in.
Yeah, you can cut it out. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I've got to go, but everybody, it was wonderful to see you tonight. We'll see you next Monday. Really appreciate you.
And everybody get growing.
Get growing. It's time to grow food, and go to the Neighborhood Food Network and get your flyers and invite your neighbors to grow food too. Okay. Connect with your neighbors. It's a wonderful thing. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.